The Fable Archive, Record 5, Case File, The House That Hungers, Primary Subjects, Hansel and Gretel, Joint Record, Signs of Narrative Codependence. Secondary Subject, The Candy House, Entity Class, Predatory Structure. Status, Architecture exhibits signs of digestion, sugar samples show parasitic behavior. Archivist warning, do not consume any materials retrieved from this record. House shows interest in new hosts. Welcome to Twilight Fables. Hansel would later insist that the forest had always been watching them, that its ancient pines leaned inward as though holding their breath, that the moss thickening around their boot soles pulsed faintly, like the green skin of some submerged creature. Gretel disagreed. She said the forest was simply patient, not watchful, something dormant waiting for the right touch to stir. But both siblings remembered the same beginning, the way their stepmother's voice thinned into annoyance whenever the pantry shelves groaned emptier, the way their father's gaze softened apologetically whenever she reminded him of those extra mouths, the way the house shrank around the edges when hunger grew bold. They remembered the night the stepmother proposed a walk, a family stroll, a bit of fresh air to clear the mind. They remembered the brittle smile she wore like a cracked porcelain mask. They remembered the 2 baskets she handed them, light, too light for any real meal, filled only with crumbs and the faint smell of fading spices. And they remembered the moment she and their father drifted away down another path, hands intertwined like 2 figures from a forgotten painting, promising to return soon. The forest swallowed that promise. Hansel reached for Gretel's hand first. Gretel let him take it without protest. The sky dimmed until it resembled the underbelly of a storm, though no clouds gathered. Birds stopped singing. Even their footsteps sounded muffled, as though the earth grew soft to absorb their sound. Hansel scattered crumbs behind them out of habit, marking the way home. Gretel quietly observed how each crumb sank into the moss like it had slipped into a hungry mouth. She said nothing. She didn't want to worry her brother. Hunger sharpened their ribs, tightened their stomachs. Hours passed, or perhaps days. The forest's time did not follow the world's. Every tree looked like the last. Every shadow seemed to stretch a little too long. At some point, the crumbs Hansel dropped began to feel heavier in the basket than in his hand, as though the forest wanted to keep them. Eventually, the path curved toward a clearing they did not remember from any story or map. Light spilled from it unnaturally, warm and golden like melted honey, and in the center stood a house. At first it looked like childhood dreams, a cottage built from gingerbread walls, sugared windows, frosting piped thick along its edges like delicate lace. But the longer the siblings stared, the less the house resembled something built, and the more it resembled something grown. The gingerbread walls rose with a faint swell, as if they breathed. The sugared windows clouded and cleared in slow pulses, like eyes adjusting to new visitors, and the frosting, snow-white and soft, seemed to shift, barely, like fresh snow disturbed by unseen footsteps. Hansel wanted to run. Gretel wanted to approach. They compromised by taking a single step together, and the house exhaled a warm scent. Vanilla, caramel, cinnamon, all the things the forest lacked. Their hunger answered like a beast roused. "Maybe someone lives here," Hansel murmured, though he did not believe it. Gretel nodded slowly, drawn forward by something she couldn't explain, something like gravity but warmer. As they approached, the house brightened, its sugary walls glimmering with a soft inner light. Gretel lifted a hand and brushed her fingertips against a candied railing. It felt warm. Not sun-warm, but skin-warm. She nearly withdrew, but hunger guided her more than caution. She pinched off a corner of the railing. The house shivered, only slightly, but enough for Hansel to notice. "Gretel," he whispered sharply, but Gretel had already tasted it. Sweetness flooded her mouth, overwhelming and rich, filling her with memories of childhood festivals when sugar sculptures adorned the village square. But beneath the sweetness lay something else, a faint, metallic tinge, like the taste of a dream that had soured. Hansel stepped forward to pull her away, but the front door swung open on its own, revealing a soft amber glow and the sweet smell of baking bread. "It's inviting us," Gretel whispered. Her voice sounded distant, as if spoken through a veil. Hansel felt cold. Or it's pretending to. But their hunger argued louder than fear. Together, they entered. Inside, the house was larger than its exterior suggested. The ceiling arched high like the inside of a cathedral. Walls glistened with sugar-crusted mosaics depicting scenes Hansel did not recognize. Figures wandering forests, children standing alone in fields, silhouettes approaching a house much like this one. Some mosaics flickered, like they were caught mid-transition, shifting subtly whenever he blinked. Gretel walked deeper, entranced. Hansel followed, feeling the house's warm air cling to his skin like humidity. A table sat in the center, laden with pastries, pies, and bread so fresh steam curled from their crusts. But there was no oven, no hearth, no sign of anyone who could have baked them. "Do you think—" Gretel began, but she didn't finish. The house finished for her, the lights brightening as though answering yes. They ate. They tried not to. They truly did. But hunger makes its own decisions, and the taste, oh, the taste unfurled across their tongues like silk, that sweetness that dissolved into warmth, that warmth that melted into comfort. It felt like being held, like being welcomed, like being claimed. When they finally staggered back from the table, full for the first time in months, the walls around them pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. Hansel whispered, "Gretel, something's wrong." Gretel blinked at him slowly, eyes glazed with satiation. "Wrong? It gave us food. It wants something. All houses want something, shelter in return, respect. But this house seemed to want more." A soft sound echoed from deeper inside, something like a creaking floorboard, something like a sigh. The air thickened. Gingerbread tiles rearranged themselves subtly underfoot. Hansel grabbed Gretel's arm. "We should leave." Gretel listened to the house's steady hum and felt strangely offended. "Leave? After it fed us?" "It didn't feed us," Hansel whispered. "It softened us." The nearest wall rippled, just once, but enough to make Gretel inhale sharply and step away. They rushed toward the door, only to find it shut tight. Gretel pulled the handle. It didn't budge. Hansel shoved his shoulder against it. The wood, or what pretended to be wood, felt unnaturally warm, almost pliant under his weight, as though pushing against flesh instead of timber. The walls exhaled again, louder this time. "Hansel," Gretel whispered, dread seeping into her voice. "The house." "I know." Something shifted overhead, like a throat clearing. Gretel pressed close to him. He grabbed her hand instinctively, their fingers lacing together with the ease of habit. But the house noticed, and it liked the connection. The floor beneath them hummed, vibrations syncing with their joined hands, their shared pulse, their synchronized breath. "It likes when we're together," Gretel whispered, horrified. Hansel did not answer, because something in the far corner of the room was changing. A wall peeled open. Not like doors, not like hinges, but like the petals of a flower unfurling, slow and deliberate. Beyond it lay a narrow hallway lined with sugar mirrors. Each mirror reflected the siblings, but not correctly. In some, Gretel walked alone. In others, Hansel stood smiling while shadows curled behind him. In one, the two of them held hands as they did now, but their reflections were older, worn, hollow-eyed. And behind those older versions, something vast and patient waited in the dark, its silhouette shaped like a house. Gretel squeezed Hansel's hand painfully tight. "We shouldn't go in there. We don't have a choice." Behind them, the entrance door sealed with a muffled sound, like lips pressing shut. The house had decided. The hallway stretched on impossibly far, the walls thickening, the mirrors warping their images. The air tasted sweeter with every breath, almost intoxicating. Hansel began to feel lightheaded, as though the house was exhaling sugar into their lungs. Gretel stumbled once, and the house reacted instantly, lights brightening, walls tightening, the floor subtly tilting to press her toward the path. "It wants to keep us," Hansel whispered, voice cracking. "It wants to keep you," Gretel corrected softly, surprising them both. Hansel stared at her. "What does that mean?" But Gretel didn't answer. Or perhaps she couldn't. The hallway finally opened into a vast chamber that could not possibly exist within the cottage's small frame. Gingerbread pillars rose like the trunks of ancient trees, frosting veins branching across them like roots reaching for new soil. In the center of the chamber was something that made Hansel stop breathing. A cradle, made of sugar glass. Rocking gently, though no wind touched it, Gretel stepped forward before Hansel could stop her. She peered into it. Hansel waited for her scream, but she only inhaled sharply. "Hansel, it's empty." The cradle rocked faster, expectant. "It wants," Gretel whispered. The house answered with a deep, resonant pulse through the floor. "A child," Hansel whispered. His chest tightened. "It wants a child." "No," Gretel said, stepping back. "It wants us." The cradle trembled violently, tilting toward them like an open mouth. Hansel grabbed Gretel's arm and pulled her away, just as the cradle shattered into 1,000 glistening shards. Shards that did not fall but hovered, circling them like insects. The chamber trembled. Frosting veins thickened. Gingerbread bark cracked open to reveal new layers beneath, darker and pulsating. The house was waking fully now, aware, hungry. "Run," Hansel breathed. Gretel didn't argue. They sprinted back toward the hallway, mirrors flashing as they passed. Each reflection changed faster now, some screaming, some reaching out, some fading into nothingness. The house roared around them, though no mouth produced the sound. The entrance door reappeared ahead, still sealed, still warm, still wrong. But as they reached it, the walls convulsed, shoving Gretel forward. She collided with the door and it softened under her weight, briefly parting like stretched dough. Hansel lunged to pull her back, and the door snapped shut again, trapping them both inside. Gretel gasped for air. Hansel pressed his forehead to the door. "It's alive. It's alive, Gretel." The house purred. The sound came from everywhere, from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, from the gingerbread itself. Gretel trembled beside him. "Hansel, it doesn't just want to keep us. It wants to change us." The floor shifted under their feet, tilting gently as though preparing to swallow. Their joined hands were slick with fear sweat, yet neither let go. The house waited, watching without eyes, breathing without lungs, hungering without mouth, and deep within its sugared walls, something ancient whispered. Hansel did not remember falling asleep, though later he would insist that the house had lulled them into unconsciousness, the way a spider lulls flies into stillness with threads too soft to feel. Gretel would claim she had stayed awake the entire time, that she had watched the walls gradually darken from warm caramel to something deeper, richer, like the crust of bread baked too long, yet pulsing faintly as if listening to her breath. Both memories were true, and neither was. The house manipulated recollection as easily as dough, kneading pieces of truth into shapes that suited its appetite. When Hansel opened his eyes, Gretel was sitting with her back to the wall, knees pulled to her chest, staring at him with a strange expression, part relief, part dread, part something else he could not name. The room around them was not the chamber with the hovering cradle, nor was it the hall of mirrors or the entrance parlor. It was something new, something small, something womb-like. The walls curved inward into a round shape, its seams sealed with thick, glossy frosting that resembled scar tissue. The air was warm, too warm, and smelled faintly of syrup and breath. Gretel whispered, "It's moving again." Hansel froze. At first he heard nothing. Then, faintly, the floor pulsed like a slow heartbeat beneath them. Once, twice, steady, patient, hungry. He swallowed hard. "It's keeping us close." "No," Gretel murmured. "It's keeping us soft." Hansel pushed himself to his feet, though the floor gave slightly beneath each step, like stepping on layers of sponge soaked in something he didn't want to imagine. The room's only exit was a small arched doorway sealed with a curtain, not fabric, but a thin, translucent layer of sugar glass, rippling faintly like stretched skin. Hansel touched it. It quivered. He recoiled. Gretel stood beside him, her hand brushing his arm. The house reacted immediately, walls brightening, heartbeat quickening. Hansel stepped away. The pulse slowed again. "It likes us together," Gretel whispered. "It likes how we fit." Hansel tried not to shudder. "We need to find another way out." But the house had already decided which paths they would walk. When Gretel pressed one trembling finger to the sugar curtain, it parted like warm taffy, opening just wide enough for them to step through. Beyond lay a corridor that hadn't existed before. The walls were smoother here, though lines of frosting traced branching patterns across them like veins, beautiful from far away, unsettling up close. They walked. They didn't speak. The house preferred quiet, and when they whispered earlier, it had dimmed the lights threateningly until even breathing felt like a disturbance. The corridor led to a spiral staircase ascending into shadows. Each step was made of layered sugar, compressed so tightly it resembled marble. Hansel touched the railing. It pulsed under his hand. "Gretel," he whispered, "we shouldn't go up." "Then where?" she asked softly. "Down?" They both looked over the staircase's edge. Only darkness waited below, thick, unmoving, like the open throat of something that never needed to breathe. Hansel pulled his hand back. Up it is. They climbed. With every rotation of the staircase, Gretel's breathing grew shaky, and Hansel felt the house pressing in behind them, not physically, but through pressure in the air, as though urging them upward like cattle being herded. On the seventh turn of the stairs, the house whispered. It didn't speak in words, not truly. It murmured with shifts in the walls, with tremors beneath the stairs, with tiny changes in the lights that felt like syllables. But Hansel understood, deep in his bones. "Come closer." The whisper made Gretel stumble. Hansel caught her wrist automatically, and the stairs brightened with pleasure. Gretel gasped. Did it purr?" Hansel shook his head. "Don't listen, don't respond, just move." They climbed faster. Eventually, the stairs ended at a door unlike the others, this one wood-like, though Hansel doubted any tree had contributed to its making. It opened before they touched it. Behind it lay another impossibility. A kitchen, a normal-sized human kitchen. Pots hung above a counter. A kettle steamed on a stove. A basket of red apples rested on a table, untouched and flawless. Everything smelled warm and inviting. Fresh bread, cinnamon, simmering broth. But something was wrong, very wrong. The room felt like a memory rehearsed too many times, perfect but flat, pleasant but soulless, like a puppet's imitation of comfort. Gretel stepped inside first. "Hansel," she whispered, "do you remember?" Her voice trailed off. She approached the table and touched one of the apples. It was warm. Hansel stayed near the door. "This isn't for us." "But it could help," Gretel said softly, lifting the apple. "We need strength." Hansel shook his head sharply. "Gretel." She hesitated. Then the apple twitched in her hand. She screamed and dropped it. The apple hit the floor with a soft thud, then rolled a little too fast, stopping near one of the pots. Hansel stepped forward, grabbing Gretel's arm and pulling her away. The pot lid rattled. Once, twice. Hansel felt cold. "The food isn't food," he breathed. "It's bait." The kitchen lights brightened in irritation. Gretel clutched Hansel's sleeve like a lifeline. "Let's go." The house didn't like that. The walls shuddered, not violently, but with enough warning to say leaving was not permitted, yet it still let them retreat to the corridor. The door shut behind them with a soft, disappointed sigh. Hansel exhaled shakily. "It wants to feed us until we can't run." "It wants to make us part of it," Gretel murmured. "We have to be careful." But the house had grown bored of careful. The corridor rippled beneath their feet, lifting slightly as though forming a slope. Gretel stumbled forward. Hansel caught her again. The house brightened delightedly. "Stop touching me," Gretel whispered suddenly, pulling her hand away sharply. Hansel blinked at her, hurt. "I was helping." "I know," she said too quickly. "I know, every time we touch, the house gets stronger. It likes it." The corridor darkened slightly with disappointment. Hansel clenched his jaw. "Fine, no touching." But the house was nothing if not adaptive. The corridor contracted behind them, squeezing gently, herding them forward until they reached another chamber. This one was smaller than the cradle chamber, but colder, darker. The walls were smooth as polished sugar, reflecting distorted versions of themselves. Gretel's reflection was taller, sharper, her eyes too dark. Hansel's reflection flickered, sometimes growing taller, sometimes shrinking into a child barely able to walk. The room hummed. Gretel inhaled sharply. "Hansel, look!" At the center of the chamber was a chair, a high-backed chair made entirely of gingerbread and sugar glass. But within the seat, pressed into the sugary material, were indentations shaped like two bodies, small bodies, child-sized, curled together. Hansel stepped backward instinctively. "What is this?" As if answering, the walls brightened, revealing faint silhouettes trapped beneath the sugar surface, small, blurred shapes like imprints of children long absorbed. Gretel's breathing turned shallow. "Hansel, I think," she swallowed, "I think the house grows from them." The chamber rumbled in displeasure. Hansel grabbed Gretel's wrist before she could step closer, forgetting their earlier rule. The house pulsed with delight. Light flared. Frosting veins branched out across the floor at their feet, reaching for them like vines. Hansel jerked her away. The house hissed, not with sound but with a sudden dimming of lights, a contraction of walls, a tightening of air that made breathing difficult. Gretel clutched her chest. "It's closing around us." Hansel looked up. The ceiling had begun descending, slowly, almost lazily. "We need to move. Now!" They sprinted for the only exit, a narrow opening forming reluctantly on the far wall. But as they approached, the floor lurched, pitching them sideways. Gretel fell first. Hansel grabbed her elbow, pulling her upright. The house crooned. Gretel looked pale. "We can't keep reacting. It's learning us." Hansel nodded, breathless. "Then we act first." They ran into the next corridor before the house could make another move. This one was short, ending in a large wooden door, real wood this time, with grain patterns and knots, and a single metal handle that looked ordinary enough. Hansel reached for it. Gretel stopped him. "Wait, look." The wood was breathing, barely visible but undeniably rising and falling. Hansel lowered his hand. Another trap. Gretel stepped forward slowly. The house seemed to watch her with interest. She touched the door lightly with one fingertip. The wood stopped breathing. Hansel felt his chest tighten. Gretel whispered, "I think this one opens somewhere it wants us to see." "Then we shouldn't open it." "We may have to." Hansel scanned the corridor. No mirrors, no windows, no alternative paths. The house had created only one option. Gretel took a shaky breath and wrapped her hand around the handle. It was warm. "On three," Hansel murmured, positioning himself beside her. "One," the house brightened. "Two," the door shivered. "Three," Gretel pulled. The door swung inward with a soft exhale, and a breeze carried the faintest impossible scent. Outside air, fresh, cold, real. Hansel lunged forward. "Gretel, wait!" But it was too late. They stumbled through the doorway and found themselves standing in the forest, the real forest. Trees towered above them. The ground felt solid beneath their feet. The air bit their skin with winter sharpness. Gretel gasped, tears filling her eyes. "Hansel, we're out!" Hansel grabbed her hand, forgetting everything, and squeezed. "We made it." The forest around them shivered. Then, without warning, every tree bent inward, not by wind, but as if bowing. The ground beneath them rippled like dough. The forest wasn't congratulating them. It was welcoming them back. Hansel's stomach dropped. Gretel stared at him, pale. "Hansel, this isn't outside." Behind them, the door vanished. The trees straightened. The air grew warm again. The sky dimmed into sugared gold. And the ground beneath them pulsed. Once, twice. Hansel whispered, "It made a forest." Gretel nodded slowly. "It made everything." The house had given them an illusion of escape, a forest grown from memory, shaped from longing, laced with sweetness. Hansel squeezed Gretel's hand tighter, and the forest brightened, pleased. "Hansel," Gretel whispered, "it doesn't want one of us." Her voice trembled. "It wants both." And somewhere in the artificial trees, a soft lullaby began to play, sung by no one, hummed by everything. Hansel tightened his grip on Gretel's hand, but the instant their fingers intertwined, the false forest reacted with a tremor of delighted sweetness, its syrup-scented air warming as though the sky itself blushed. He released her quickly, heart hammering, breath sharp, but the forest continued to glow faintly, savoring the echo of their touch. Gretel stepped back until her shoulder brushed a tree trunk that pulsed once as if greeting her. She flinched away from it. "It's not even pretending anymore," she whispered. "It doesn't want to trick us. It wants to raise us." Hansel's stomach turned. Raise, devour, transform. The house used memories the way bakers used flour, shaping people into whatever form suited its appetite. The forest shifted around them, branches subtly repositioning, paths rearranging. Birds chirped somewhere overhead, almost birds, their cries half-formed, half-sung, like the house couldn't fully recall what a bird was supposed to sound like. Hansel forced himself to move, to think. "We need to find the seams," he murmured, "places where the illusion breaks." Gretel nodded, though she kept glancing upward as if expecting the sky to lean down and swallow them. They chose a direction at random, north, Hansel guessed, though the trees had no moss, no markers of natural orientation. They walked. The forest shifted behind them, closing paths, opening new ones, gently herding without force, a motherly threat, a patient shepherd. The sky flickered once overhead, a brief glitch like the momentary hiccup of a lantern flame. Gretel pointed up. There. Hansel followed her gaze, but saw nothing now but golden clouds. "Try again," he said. Gretel closed her eyes and breathed slowly. "This way." She grabbed his wrist, not his hand, avoiding the house's pleasure, and pulled him toward a cluster of trees. As they approached, the trees seemed perfectly ordinary. But when they stepped between them, the air shimmered faintly, like heat above a fire. Then the forest ahead blurred. For a moment Hansel saw it, a thin crack in reality, like a seam between stitched fabric. The illusion rippled. Behind it lay something darker. Not freedom, never freedom, but a different chamber, perhaps one closer to the house's core. Gretel reached toward the seam. The forest reacted violently. Every tree bent inward as though inhaling sharply. The ground pulsed, harder than ever. Branches trembled like fingers twitching in warning. The air tightened. The birds stopped singing. Hansel grabbed Gretel's arm and pulled her back just as the seam snapped shut like an eyelid. "It's trying to protect it," Gretel whispered. "The core." Hansel nodded. "Where it keeps everything." The trees shifted again, but this time something else happened, something new, something wrong. A voice echoed softly through the forest, faint at first, like a child humming behind a closed door. Gretel stiffened. "Hansel, that sounds like—" "Don't say it." But the voice grew clearer. A child's voice, high, fragile, crying. "Help! Help!" Gretel turned, instinct pulling her forward. Hansel grabbed her wrist instinctively. The forest brightened, pleased. Gretel froze. "We can't leave someone here," she whispered. "What if—" "It's not real," Hansel hissed. "It's bait." "What if it's not?" "Gretel." The crying sharpened suddenly, rising into a thin, terrified wail. Gretel ripped her arm away and ran. "Gretel!" Hansel chased her instantly, branches parting for her, slapping his face as though punishing him. Gretel ran toward a clearing where golden light poured unnaturally bright from above. The sobbing grew louder, louder. Hansel stumbled into the clearing and froze. So did Gretel. In the center of the clearing sat a small boy, curled into himself, shaking, crying, dressed in rags, his hair matted, his face streaked with sugar dust like faded ash. Gretel whispered, "Hansel, that's—" The boy lifted his head, and it was Hansel. Not exactly him, too young, maybe 7 or 8, but the resemblance was undeniable. The child wiped his eyes with trembling fingers. "Gretel?" Gretel took a step back. "Hansel, why does it look like you as a child?" Hansel felt ice crawl up his spine. It's copying a memory. Or showing one, Gretel whispered. The boy stood. When he spoke, his voice shook like brittle glass. I waited. You said you'd come back. Gretel's face crumpled. Hansel grabbed her arm and yanked her backward. That is not me. The boy blinked and blinked and blinked again. Too many times. The clearing dimmed. The boy's shadow stretched, long and hungry, reaching like a tongue across the ground. Gretel gasped. Hansel! The boy smiled, but the smile split too wide, the skin cracking like the crust of overbaked sugar. The trees leaned inward. The ground throbbed. The boy dissolved, his form melting into golden dust that spiraled upward and reformed into the house's walls, revealing another seam, wider this time. A door. A real door. Gretel stepped forward. Hansel grabbed her wrist. The house didn't brighten this time. Instead, it hissed, a shimmer of irritation. Gretel swallowed. This is it, the core. Hansel nodded slowly. And whatever's behind it, that's where it wants us. They approached the door. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat. Gretel touched it. The door dissolved into syrupy mist. They stepped inside, and the world changed. No walls, no ceiling. A vast chamber stretched endlessly, floors made of dark caramel glass, reflecting their distorted reflections beneath like figures trapped under ice. And in the center stood the true heart of the house, a massive cocoon, made not of silk but layered sugar. Its surface pulsed rhythmically, as though something inside was breathing, something large, something nearly formed. Gretel whispered, Hansel, it's building something. Hansel nodded numbly. A child, he whispered, but not from us, from our memories, from our bond. The cocoon brightened, flashed, cracked. A thin fracture traced across its surface, and a soft, infant-like whimper escaped from within. Gretel stumbled backward. It wants a family, Hansel said. A matched set, a pair, a parent, a child. The cocoon cracked again. A tiny sugar hand pressed against the inside surface, stretching it outward. Gretel screamed. The chamber trembled. The illusion forest outside shuddered violently, flickering through scenes, hallways, the cradle room, the kitchen, like the house was losing control. Hansel grabbed Gretel's shoulders. We have to break it. Break what? The cocoon? The whole structure? The bond, Hansel whispered. Gretel stared at him, horrified. Hansel, it's feeding on our connection. Exactly. The cocoon split further. A small face pressed through, mouth opening in a silent cry. Pure sugar, pure hunger, produced from them, for them. Hansel stepped away from Gretel. The chamber dimmed sharply, like a candle smothered. The cocoon quivered. The house trembled with panic. Gretel understood. Hansel, don't. It wants us together, Hansel said, voice shaking, so we stay apart. Gretel's eyes filled with tears. It'll tear itself apart trying to fix that. Good. Hansel took another step back. The floor cracked. The cocoon gave a shrill, warbling cry like a newborn denied milk. The house wailed. The chamber flickered uncontrollably. Frosting veins burst. Sugar glass cracked. The world around them shook violently. Gretel staggered backward. Hansel yelled, Run! The cocoon exploded, not outward but inward, collapsing into itself as the house's architecture folded, shrank, convulsed. Walls collapsed into swirling sugar storms. Floors buckled like sheets of melting ice. The house moaned, a long, shuddering sound of collapse. Gretel reached for Hansel, instinct before thought, then stopped, forcing herself still, their eyes locked. She whispered, Don't touch me. He nodded. They ran separately. The house screamed. The sugar forest dissolved behind them. Corridors twisted into nothing. The cradle chamber folded like paper. The kitchen melted into syrup. Light fractured. Darkness poured from the cracking seams. Gretel stumbled toward a distant glow, pale, cold, real. Hansel sprinted toward another on the opposite side. The house shrieked, pulling at them with everything it had. Sweet winds, sticky floors, collapsing corridors, trying to drag them back into unity. But they stayed apart. The house trembled, shook, collapsed inward. With a final convulsive shudder, everything went dark. Silence, cold air, Real air. Hansel gasped, coughing on dirt. Leaves rustled overhead. The sky was gray, the real sky. Gretel staggered toward him from several yards away, shaking, covered in flecks of sugar dust. They stared at each other, breathing hard. "Hansel," she whispered, "are we—" He nodded shakily. "I think we're out." They did not touch, could not for a long time. Behind them, deep in the forest, a faint, hollow sigh drifted through the trees, a last exhale from a dying house, or a sleeping one. Gretel whispered, "Hansel, what if it's not gone?" Hansel stared into the trees. "Then we stay apart." Gretel nodded, trembling. "Together," she whispered. Hansel managed a soft, broken laugh. Just not physically. And somewhere far away, in a place between stories, between archives, between worlds, Record 5 trembled, its margins distorting, sugar-like residue spreading across the parchment, as though the house had left a piece of itself behind, watching, waiting, hungering.
Thank you for joining us in the world of Twilight Fables. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more.